So now we're starting to see that the Bible can in fact be trusted, but we're certainly not done with this study. There's a lot more to be revealed. I mean, just saying that Media Persia followed Babylon certainly is not enough to fully provide the support we need for my title as why I believe Bible prophecy is the truth and what it says will happen in the future, and the history that comes along with what the Bible foretold. So we're going to continue in this study, and now we're going to look at Daniel 7. Of course, we've skipped chapter 6. Chapter 6 deals with Daniel and the lion's den. Again, it's all about obedience and just the type of characters that the people of the Most High are going to need in the end times, where these visions are relevant. You know, in chapter 3, of course, we didn't study this, but chapter 3 deals with Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in the fiery furnace because they did not want to bow down to the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar erected after that vision. You know, he saw the statue of a head of gold and, you know, chest and arms of silver and so forth, but he chose to erect a statue of all gold, you know, maybe to indicate that his kingdom would last forever. But of course, that was dealing with his pride, which was checked in chapter 4. But again, these chapters that are not included in these prophetic visions deal with character development and the types of characters we're going to need as people of the Most High in the latter days. So we're going to continue now. We're going to read and study Daniel chapter 7 because this is going to start to bridge the gap with what we saw in chapter 2 and 5 and really make a complete picture so you can see the history that has resulted or unfolded after these prophecies were foretold. So Daniel chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked up, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and a dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were open. I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body devoured, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came unto the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me known the interpretation of the things. So Daniel has this vision. The first beast is this lion with eagle's wings, followed by a second beast, which is a bear raised up on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth. Then there's a third beast that is like a leopard. It has 4 wings on its back and 4 heads. And then this fourth sort of nondescript beast, it has iron teeth, and it has 10 horns. And among those 10 horns, another horn, a little horn, would come up and subdue or uproot 3 of those 10 horns. The next scene in the vision is a judgment scene, where we see the Ancient of Days. Judgment was set, the books were opened. Okay, so we see this continual theme. First, second, third, fourth beast. Something happens with this fourth beast, and then there's judgment by the Most High. And that took us up to Daniel 15, verse 16, where he sought the interpretation. Now, verse 17 is where we get the interpretation. These great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. Now, some say, okay, those are 4 kings and not kingdoms. Like in Daniel 2, it was successive kingdoms. Now, in Daniel 7, we're seeing the word king. So some might think, okay, we're talking about kings within one kingdom, for example. But I'm going to show you why that's not the case. Verse 18, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So this is the same thing we saw in Daniel 2, where we saw the first, second, third, fourth beast. That fourth beast would be divided, and then the kingdom of the Most High would take over. Okay, so it's the same theme here, except now instead of the vision that Nebuchadnezzar saw, Daniel's seeing a vision that is a repeat of the same vision Nebuchadnezzar saw, but he's seeing it from a different perspective. Verse 19, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse or different from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. So this fourth beast is of real concern for Daniel. The first 3, they come and go, but it's the fourth beast that really captures his attention. And it's the activities of this fourth beast that that Daniel really hones in on and focuses on. So let's continue to look at it in verse 20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other, that little horn, which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So after Daniel is shown the entire vision, and he's starting to get the interpretation, the focus really is on this fourth beast and this little horn that comes out of it, out of the 10 horns that were on his head, because we're starting to get a little bit more light and maybe starting to see a little bit more why Daniel was really interested in the activities of this little horn, because it says in verse 21 that he beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. So these are the same saints that he's, in verse 18, are the ones that are going to possess the kingdom. But we're going to see, prior to them possessing the kingdom, this little horn is going to make war with them. Until, verse 22, the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints should possess the kingdom. So same scenario where you had these world empires, and there would be, from the fourth empire, somewhat of a change that would take place, and that would be followed by the kingdom of the Most High God. So we're seeing the same exact format being played out here in Daniel 7. So we're going to continue in verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Now remember, earlier I said that some would believe that because it said these are four kings. Well, here it's clearly saying these are four kingdoms. All right, so just like you had the four kingdoms in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the fourth one changing, you had the legs of iron changing to the feet that were part iron, and you had this new this introduction of clay or miry clay into the picture. But it's the same thing we're seeing here in Daniel 7. It's successive kingdoms that are going to be destroyed by the coming king of the Most High God. Verse 24. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. So we're starting to see a repeat of what we just read, but now we're going to get some enlarging of why Daniel is so focused on the activities of this little horn. Verse 25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing of time. So here in verse 25, we're seeing that this little horn did not just make war with the saints. Now he's speaking great words against the Most High God, in addition to wearing out the saints. And it's funny that he wears out the saints in thinking to change times and laws. That's something that I intend to go over in more detail in the upcoming study, because I think that's very fascinating when you look at some of these changes that have been made. But the point here is that this little horn power, one of the reasons Daniel is focusing on it so much is because it's attacking God's people, and it's attacking the Most High God himself by speaking great words against the Most High and wearing out the saints of the Most High and changing times and laws that only the Most High could implement. Verse 26, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much trouble me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. So this focus on, this sequence, you have this fourth beast, and then the little horn that comes from it, and this little horn attacking the Most High God and the people of the Most High God until it is destroyed by the coming kingdom of the Most High God. And it's this last part, that last sequence of the fourth beast, the little horn and judgment, that really troubles Daniel. That's really what he focuses on, because it was repeated twice after it was initially given. And the reason we're looking at this chapter is because we're seeing the same scenario that we saw in Daniel 2. But now we're seeing it from a different perspective. Where Nebuchadnezzar saw metal, gold, silver, bronze, or brass, and iron, Daniel sees 4 earthly kingdoms from the perspective of beasts. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar saw metals, Daniel is seeing beasts, but they're following the same timeline. Now, I believe this timeline is repeated for emphasis. I'm going to take a look at Genesis chapter 41 and look at verse 32. This is when Pharaoh had his dream. And Pharaoh wanted to know the meaning of the dream, so it was actually given to him twice. And it says in Genesis 41 verse 32, "And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass." So Daniel seeing this vision, it's like, would believers only trust the vision that Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan god, had? Maybe, maybe not, but at least now the Most High God is entrusting this message to his servant Daniel, and he's showing this same timeline from a different perspective. What we see in Daniel 7 that we didn't get as much light on in Daniel 2 is that this 4th kingdom would be different. Daniel 2 did say it would be divided. And then you have the feet, if you will, of iron and clay. Feet have, most feet have 10 toes. And here in Daniel 7, we're just shown that there would be 10 kingdoms that would come from this 4th empire. And from those 10 kingdoms, a small kingdom or a little horn would emerge from among them and would subdue or uproot, as it said, 3 of those 10 kingdoms. What we saw is that this little horn power would make war with the saints of God. He would think to change times and laws that only the Most High God can do, and he would wear out the saints of the Most High God, but his kingdom would be destroyed by God's coming kingdom. And this final aspect of it, this final element where you had the 4th beast, the little horn, and judgment, it's repeated twice. So we see it 3 times in Daniel 7. The whole sequence is given, but it's the 4th beast, the little horn, and judgment that's repeated over and over. This is basically the timeline that we saw in Daniel 2, but now it's given in Daniel 7, and it builds on the foundation that was already established. Again, the prophecy is now entrusted to Daniel to communicate it to the people of the Most High. And Daniel knew the main prophetic timeline was relevant to God's people living in the end times. And this vision sheds light on the fact that the relevance would mean a difficult experience for believers before possessing God's kingdom. And I think that's important because it really subdues any notion that the quote-unquote church is going to be gone before persecution and all these things. There are those who believe that believers are going to be secretly raptured or taken away from the earth prior to the ugly things that are going to take place on this earth. But what this prophecy is showing us is that's not the case. The little horn is going to make war with the saints of the Most High prior to the saints of the Most High possessing the kingdom. And this little fact alone slaps in the face of all of those false doctrines and false teachings that come out of seminaries, again, that promote this left behind theory, or the idea that believers are not going to have to go through a difficult experience. And that really misdirects and distracts people, and maybe not be prepared as they should be when these things happen. And so that's why I think it's important to understand this prophecy. It helps us to understand where we are, but also gives us that glimpse into the future. But if you are learning it from people that have an agenda, chances are likely, or chances are higher, I should say, that you would miss the point of what we're going through, and challenge with that is, if we don't know the truth, we can be deceived. So here in Daniel 7, same timeline as in Daniel 2, we're just given more pieces of the puzzle, and we're able to fill in more and show. Again, we're in Daniel 2. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar that the dream was relevant for those living in the end times, and we're seeing Daniel's focus being on those who would be persecuted by this little horn prior to God's kingdom being set up, and we can only deduct from that that persecution would be taking place in the end times. So we're going to continue in this study. We're going to build off what we just studied in Daniel 7 and add more color to that with our study in Daniel 8, and that'll be the last chapter we study before we put all this together. So stay tuned.